Hi, everybody. Chef AJ here, and welcome to Weight Loss Wednesday, episode 104. I'm Chef AJ, the creator of the Ultimate Weight Loss Program, and this is where I answer your questions about healthy, permanent, and sustainable weight loss. And I show you recipes that will help you achieve both the health and the body you so richly deserve. Now, I know I said at episode 100 that I wasn't going to do these live anymore, that I was just going to do recipes. Well, the universe had a different plan. So I live in an apartment building that is having a city mandated repipe. We're getting copper piping. So I haven't really been able to use my apartment very much these last few weeks because everything's torn up, the walls, the pipes. We go all day without water. I have to be out of the apartment with Bailey most of the time, so I haven't been able to use my kitchen to shoot any videos. And so Pam said that I should talk about how I've been able to eat these past few weeks. And the answer is actually quite simply, is really the same way I eat when I travel or the same way I eat when I have full use of the kitchen. I have learned over the last 7 years since I've adopted the Ultimate Weight Loss Program that the best way to eat for health, weight loss, and weight management is the Ultimate Weight Loss dietary style. And to keep it simple and to do my batch cooking. So pretty much I've done the same thing, maybe a little bit different because I have to make sure there's enough because I don't know when I'll get into my kitchen. So for example, instead of steaming my vegetables on the stove because I can't get in there, I sometimes have to steam them in the microwave. So I've been using this wonderful Pampered Chef microwave cooker, and this easily holds 2 pounds of vegetables. Well, it doesn't hold 2 pounds of every vegetable. It holds 2 pounds of Brussels sprouts. I get the organic ones from Costco. For things like broccoli and cauliflower, it maybe only holds a pound. Definitely holds 2 pounds of zucchini. So I've been just using the micro steamer for that. Of course, I've just been putting everything out, and you can't see this. This is my living room. There's a screen, but I just put everything on the table. I've got my Instant Pot so I can easily batch cook my grains, my quinoa, my wild rice. Generally with regular rice, I often just, excuse me, somebody wants to come up right there. Okay, we got a little visitor today. There you go. Say hello, Bailey. I always get many more hearts when you're on the show. Ain't you cute? Say hello, hello. Why are you hitting yourself? Anyway, so I generally use the rice from Trader Joe's, the organic frozen rice, because it's just easy, convenient. It takes 3 minutes in the microwave, and it's just the perfect serving size for me, about 2 cups. But I do use my rice cooker occasionally because I love the Texmati rice. But everything I can do, honestly, if all I had was the Instant Pot, I could live on that, just doing my grains. I could do my potatoes in there, even though I prefer them roasted, and I could do my vegetables in there. But I'm very fortunate to have the Breville air fryer oven, which was gifted to me by one of you angels out there, and you know who you are. I'm not allowed to say your name, so thank you. I use it every day. And I just batch cook my potatoes and my sweet potatoes. So I'm willing to eat very simply. So it's been an inconvenience not being able to be in my apartment so many hours or have water, but food-wise, it's business as usual, eating the same thing that I always eat. So thanks, Pam, for suggesting that I talk about that. And haven't been eating a lot of salads lately because today was the first day in a long time that the store actually had romaine or actually any lettuce. So we'll be getting back to eating our big salads. So today, what I wanted to talk about was the difference between abstinence and compliance, because at least in the Ultimate Weight Loss Program, a lot of people mix that up. So, I was a speech major in college. And so words are really important to me and how they're used and what they mean. And that's why it drives me crazy when people in the Ultimate Weight Loss Program say, oh, I forgot my breakfast at home and it's 10 o'clock and I'm starving. Well, you're not starving if it's 10 o'clock in the morning, if you ate yesterday and if you have fat on your body, you're actually not starving. I've worked at True North where people that are thin for medical reasons don't eat for 40 days. Now, maybe they could say they're starving, but if you skipped breakfast and it's 10 in the morning, you're not starving. You might be hungry, you might be uncomfortable, but you're not starving. And so it drives me crazy when people mix up abstinence and compliance because they're not the same thing. And so this is how I define it. And of course, you're welcome to your own definition, but I encourage you to actually look the word up. So compliance is a word that's usually used in medicine. I learned the word from Dr. Alan Goldhammer. And the definition is following a prescribed course of action. It doesn't say what the course of action is. It just says that you're following a prescribed course of action. So for example, if your doctor were to prescribe a medication for you to take twice a day, every day, and you took it twice a day, every day, you would be compliant. If you took it once only a day or didn't take it at all, you would be non-compliant. The reason I like the word compliant when it comes to food addiction and weight loss is because I find that people in general, and women in particular, beat themselves up anytime they have a slip, whether it's a major or a minor one or a relapse. And they say things like, well, I was really good today because I had vegetables for breakfast. I was really bad today because I had a cookie. And I try to explain to them that you may be good or bad for various reasons, but it's not because you ate kale over cookies. You either were compliant or not compliant. If you ate vegetables for breakfast, you were following the Ultimate Weight Loss Program where we say to eat vegetables for breakfast. And if you didn't, you were not compliant. But for me and for most people, there's not a lot of judgment in the word compliant. For some people, actually, there is, though. Some people don't like the word compliant. They prefer the word adherent. And, let's not get caught up on words, people. A rose by any other name. That's what happens with food addiction. People don't like the word, so they don't follow the program because they don't want to admit that they're a food addict. Well, then call it puppy, call it Bailey. I don't care what you call it. So the idea is stop thinking of yourself good or bad, whether you're on or off the program. You're either compliant or non-compliant. And to me, that doesn't hurt my feelings if I'm not compliant or you're non-compliant. I don't think you're a bad person. And it makes it a lot easier to understand what that word means. You're either doing the program as designed, which it could be any program, by the way. It doesn't have to be my program. Compliance means following prescribed course of action. If you follow it, you're compliant. If you don't, you're not compliant. But big deal. I mean, does that hurt your feelings to be non-compliant? But it could hurt your feelings if somebody said you were bad because you did that. You're not bad or good by the way you eat. You're compliant or non-compliant. So a lot of times people will have a slip or a relapse and they'll say, well, I was non-compliant. When the real thing they mean is they broke abstinence. And this is where it's really important to understand what abstinence is, because the Ultimate Weight Loss Program is an abstinence-based program. And apparently I thought I was really clear, when I came out as a food addict many years ago and started doing videos, and even in the very first blog post that Jeff Nelson did about my weight loss, that this is an abstinence-based program. You can lose weight without abstinence. You can weigh and measure your food. You can eat it. You can eat Snicker bar probably 3 times a day. I think that would be 1,200 calories and probably lose weight. At the end of the day, the Ultimate Weight Loss Program, UWL, also stands for your ultimate warranty for life, or the ultimate way of life, because we really are a health program disguised as a weight loss program, but we also deal with food addiction. And I think it's the only vegan program that I know of that does. But we do that by being abstinence-based. And so what we are abstinent from, and I try to make it really clear for day one, because I'm not trying to dupe anybody, especially when I get people that not only are not vegan but aren't interested, we are abstinent from all animal programs all the time. No wiggle room for a percentage here or percentage there on special occasions. And in the acronym that I use, SOFAs, sugar, oil, flour, alcohol, salt, it's a SOFAs-free program. There's actually a lot more things that we recommend that you be abstinent of if you want to achieve health and weight loss and recovery or management of your food addiction. So for example, tobacco, nicotine. I am shocked at the amount of people that come to the program that are still active smokers and that are not even willing to quit. And they're often eating animal products too. You're welcome to join. I just don't know if I can help you in an abstinent-based program if you're not willing to be abstinent of the 2 things that are probably most deleterious to your health, the eating of animal products, particularly the dairy, and smoking. So I would recommend that you deal with those addictions first, and then that we can help you and tweak you and support you in your recovery from food addiction. But what's the point of losing weight, being the thinnest person in the coffin if you're smoking? So I'd really recommend that all the smokers out there, get help for their nicotine and tobacco addiction. And if you're still, vaping or using marijuana, do that first, because just losing weight isn't going to help you get healthy if you're still suffering from all these addictions. Now, there's a few addictions that people have that don't let that stand in your way of joining the Ultimate Weight Loss Program. A lot of people can't get off the salt or can't get off it right away. That's not a problem. And it truthfully, in the SOFAs acronym, the second S, salt, I'm not perfect with that either. And that don't let that stand in the way. We can talk a little bit about why for some people that could be a deal breaker, but for the most part, the second S, salt, is not the biggest deal. But the first four letters of SOFAs are the sugar, oil, flour, alcohol, both in terms of just their caloric density and their addictive properties. You know, caffeine is one of those things that is not easy to get off of for most people, because most people that are using caffeine, it's usually in the form of coffee and chocolate or both. And it's one of those things that unless you're going to True North to do a medically supervised water fast, that you could feel really bad for a few days and get very bad headaches. So there's ways to get off of caffeine quickly, like by doing a water fast or just white knuckling, or going slowly where you're drinking, let's say you're drinking 4 cups of coffee a day, you do 3 cups and 1 cup of decaf for several weeks, and then you keep titrating down. So you can still do this program if you're addicted to caffeine, but you have to be willing to, at some point, hopefully want to overcome your addictions, because they're all related with food addiction. And there's evidence to show that one, what's the word I'm thinking, exacerbates the other. Like, for example, people think nothing of that 1 cup of coffee in the morning, but they don't realize how that's impacting their sleep 17 hours later because of the half-life, or causing their food cravings in the afternoon for sugar. And these are articles that I post over and over in Ultimate Weight Loss. That wasn't the purpose of today's talk of abstinence versus compliance. I wanted to explain the difference. So now, abstinence has lots of different meanings, and if you Google abstinence, you'll see what those different meanings are. Hold on one second. I'm just going to check my phone, because it's probably, if it's working out, it's probably going to be easier for me to see the comments there. So just give me 1 second if you don't mind. And thank you for being here, by the way. And my shirt is courtesy of Janine Elder from Potato Wisdom. So I see you guys are sharing. Thank you very much. It doesn't let me share because I'd like the group to know. Oh, well, I can always check these later. Anyway, sorry for the delay. So the American College of Addictionology and Compulsive Disorders defines addiction as the continued or compulsive use of any substance or behavior without regard for negative consequence. So I'll repeat that. According to the American College of Addictionology, addiction is defined as the continued or compulsive use of any substance or behavior without regard for negative consequences. So the definition of abstinence that I personally use is the elimination of any drug or drug-like substance upon which one is dependent. My personal definition of abstinence is the elimination of any drug or drug-like substance upon which one is dependent. And so for me, that's really sugar and flour. I never had a problem with alcohol, and oil was not something I was addicted to. I don't eat it for health reasons and calorie density reasons, but not so much for that. So there's definitely a difference between abstinence and compliance, because you can be perfectly 100% abstinent but not be compliant. And that's not a big deal if you're not compliant. I mean, especially if you're abstinent, in my opinion. It is a big deal if you break abstinent if you're an addict. Now, the Ultimate Weight Loss Program is not a 12-step program. I really don't know very much about 12-step programs. The little bit I do know comes to me from people that are in them or were in them, or from the 2 interviews or 1 interview I did with Dr. Lance Dotis, who wrote The Heart of Addiction, who actually bashes 12-steps programs as being harmful. And I'm not here to support or disagree with or agree with his point of view. What he talks about in 12-step programs is what works is the community, which is exactly what we have in the Ultimate Weight Loss Program. But I did go to one 12-step meeting when I was 20 years old. I was recommended to go to something called Emotional Health Anonymous by a psychiatrist. And I doesn't mean if 12-step programs are working for you, please continue doing them. But for me, it didn't work because I couldn't resonate with the fact that they made us say that we were powerless over our emotions. And I believe that the words you speak are powerful, the thoughts you think are powerful, and I didn't feel like going around saying I am powerless over my emotions. Just like I don't want to say I'm powerless over alcohol or drugs or food, because I'm not powerless. It's the addictive nature of the substance that makes me powerless if I ingest it. But the only bite that I can control, or the only sip, is the first one. And if I can do that, then I'm not powerless. Now, once I take that first bite of sugar or flour, then the disease takes over. And yeah, I guess I am pretty powerless. But as long as I stay abstinent, I'm not powerless. Abstinence is bliss. There's no bad day when you're abstinent. But I can tell you, there's plenty of bad days when you aren't, especially if you suffer from addiction. And so we started what we call the 63 Days of Abstinence Challenge in the Ultimate Weight Loss Program on October 1st of this year to help the people get through the most difficult part of the year for most people, especially people that are food addicts. Halloween, Thanksgiving, Hanukkah, Christmas, New Year's, Kwanzaa, so to speak. The truth is we really shouldn't have to do the 63 days of abstinence in ultimate weight loss, because if you're following the program, abstinence is a 365-day-a-year venture. It's 365 days a year. It's 24 hours a day. It's every minute, every second, every bite. And so I'm really rethinking this for next year of doing 63 days of abstinence, because why? What are we doing the other, 262 days a year? So the point is that a lot of times I'll see people's posts and they'll say, I ate such and such, I wasn't compliant. Well, you actually can be compliant without being, can you be compliant without being abstinent? Probably not. But the thing is, I would still recommend you eat vegetables for breakfast, even on days you relapse, and follow many parts of the program like daily exercise, mindfulness, meditation, things like that. So in ultimate weight loss specifically, when we talk about compliance, that's following the program 100%, all the things I recommend in my book, The Secrets to Ultimate Weight Loss, which I don't do all the time, and especially when I travel, and especially now that I'm goal weight. These are things mostly recommended for people that are struggling with food addiction and trying to lose weight. But for example, one of the things we recommend is for people that are at a plateau, for example, is sequencing the meals, where you're eating the lowest calorically dense foods first, the non-starchy vegetables. Generally, that means eating a large raw salad without any starch in it, followed by a large serving of steamed greens, and then the starch. Well, many of us are at goal weight and have been at goal weight for years. We don't have to do it. Some of us do it because we like eating that way, and we notice we get in more vegetables, but if we don't do it, I guess we're technically not compliant. But as long as we're not eating sofas, and then I would extend the sofas to animal products, tobacco, marijuana, any other recreational drugs, and also caffeine and chocolate, we're still abstinent. So I don't worry so much about compliance, but I do worry about abstinence if you are somebody who is vulnerable to the effects of food addiction. So I hope this makes sense. Is this making sense? You see, the thing is when I do this myself, guys, I can't see. So that's the one thing that's great about doing it with somebody. I'll try to look at my phone to see. Yeah, that's not helping either. So anyway, I can check this later. So that's the thing about abstinence. And abstinence is fought. People that are addicts fight abstinence. People that are alcoholic want to have a better quality of life often and quit drinking, but they want to do it without quitting drinking, or the same thing with smokers. When it comes to food, it's more difficult to be abstinent because the items that we recommend you be abstinent from are ubiquitous. They're insidious. So sugar is put in everything from baby formula to geriatric formula. It's put in cigarettes. It's everywhere you go, hardware store, pet store, every interaction. So it's very, very hard. You could live a life and avoid probably cocaine and even alcohol if you wanted to. Tobacco, it's very hard to smoke in places, but it's very hard to avoid food, particularly hyperpalatable food. And the fact that so many people still don't believe that food addiction is real, which, by the way, it's a terrible name for a disease. It's refined food addiction, sugar, flour, alcohol. I like the idea of calling it what Dr. Vera Tarman said in the 3 interviews I did with her on YouTube, a DDD, dopamine deficiency disorder. But because it's something that's not yet in the DSM, that's not largely recognized by the medical community, people think it's benign, but it's not benign, because look at all the research on sugar. It's been shown to light up the same parts of the brain as cocaine and heroin on brain scans, MRIs, and to be just as addictive. So I'm not here to argue whether or not those things are addictive. I think I've given you enough research to show it is. And even if it isn't, let's face it, these aren't health promoting foods. These are processed foods. They're not found in nature. They're highly processed. They're very calorically dense. So even if they were healthful, even if sugar, oil, flour, and alcohol were healthful, which they're not, got over 100 episodes you can watch that explain here and there why they're not. They're too calorically dense for the average person to lose weight eating, or definitely to maintain their weight eating. So because I don't want to say I'm not a fan of the 12-step program because I haven't done one. I just didn't like the one that I attended because I didn't like to have to say I am powerless, because I don't believe that. And I feel if you keep saying something, that's an affirmation, it will be true. what I don't like about 12-step programs, if I'm understanding them correctly, is that you get a chip when you have a certain amount of days under your belt of whether it's, if it's gambling anonymous, if not gambling. And if you break abstinence, it's like it's taken away and now you're on day one. And to me, that's crazy because I have over 2,500 days of abstinence from sugar and flour and oil and alcohol and salt. And I had one day when I relapsed. I'm not giving back those 2,500 days and starting day one. And it breaks my heart. And it also kind of gets me upset when people in Ultimate Weight Loss say day one. There's no day one unless you literally have lived your life without a single day without having sugar, oil, flour, alcohol, salt. Then there is no day one. It's a continuation of wherever you left off. We do these sticker challenges in Ultimate Weight Loss, and for every day you're abstinent, we get these really cool stickers. Mine are Scooby-Doo or broccoli, and you put it on your calendar, and then at the end of the month you see all these beautiful stickers, sort of like when you were little and your teacher gave you a gold star. But you don't lose all the days of abstinence because you had a misstep, a slip, and even if you have a 3-month relapse, you don't count those days, you don't get a sticker, but you don't lose all the good work you did. So that's why I'm not a fan of that way of thinking in terms of abstinence. So it's really important. We spent a whole module in the mastery program last week going over abstinence, and really it's important that you define it for yourself. And the thing I want to also mention is that there's not only a difference between abstinence and compliance, but there's a difference between restriction and elimination, because a lot of people think of abstinence as restrictive. And there's a difference between eliminating something that's a drug, that's a toxin, that's a poison, that's going to make you fat, sick, or both, and eliminating it. If I told you not to eat rat poison, that that Ultimate Weight Loss, this program, you would have to be abstinent of weight loss, you have to be abstinent of rat poison. You wouldn't think twice about it. You wouldn't say, wow, that's so restrictive. Of course not, because rat poison is a toxin and you wouldn't eat it anyway. But say that with sugar or oil or flour or alcohol, and it's like, oh my God, this is so restrictive. Well, it's not any more restrictive than the way our ancestors ate throughout almost all of human history, because what I'm asking you to eat, fruits, vegetables, whole grains, legumes, and nuts and seeds and avocado, if you calorically can manage them and they're not trigger foods for you, is what has been throughout human history as food. And what I'm asking you to eliminate, not restrict, there's a difference. Because I'm asking you to eliminate basically poison. Things that are not food, sugar, oil, flour, alcohol, and salt, things that are not found in nature, at least not in any concentrated form. Things that Dr. Goldhammer would say are not foods, but chemicals that we add to our food that fool our brain satiety mechanisms and cause us to exponentially overeat. So in Ultimate Weight Loss, we don't restrict anything. We don't restrict when you can eat or how much you can eat or why you can eat if you're eating for emotional eating reasons, or when you can eat. We eliminate foods that are not going to serve your health. So there's no weighing and measuring or counting or reporting. You eat what you want, when you want, as often as you want, but of the right foods to the left of the red line, with a little bit of right of the red line food if you can handle it, and we can go into that. I've done that so many times. So we don't restrict in Ultimate Weight Loss, we eliminate. There's a big difference between restriction and elimination, and a big difference between abstinence and compliance. And I wish you would spend some time learning what these words mean so that you can understand really what the program is. A lot of people say, oh, well, if I restrict, I binge. Now, that's true if what you're restricting is starch, because there is no binging without restriction of either calories, and specifically calories from starch. Binging is always people that have gone on some kind of diet. They're often people that have been anorexic and they've restricted calories, and starch are probably your most important calories, because this is the foundation of a healthy diet throughout human history and the Ultimate Weight Loss program. Yes, we eat a lot of vegetables. They're healthy. They're great for our skin. Those thylakoids fight food cravings, but this is a starch-based program, always has been by calories. And so when people restrict starch, they often end up binging. So when people say, oh, but if I'm abstinent of sugar and flour, I'll want it more. Well, of course you'll want it more, because you're an addict. If you're not an addict, you won't want it more or less. You won't even care. I give the example of when my husband had to give up chocolate and alcohol and coffee when he was diagnosed with a congenital heart defect. Well, he's never been overweight. He's never been a food addict. And on the first visit, the cardiologist wrote on the prescription pad, avoid chocolate, caffeine, and alcohol. He wasn't really drinking alcohol except a couple times a year at a wedding or a bar mitzvah, so that wasn't a big deal. And he didn't drink caffeine that much, but he did eat chocolate every single day. He had the Fakiato from my first book on process, and he looked at the prescription and he goes, oh, okay. He's not an addict. Everybody else would be kicking and screaming. And that's how you know if you are an addict, because of the fact that you can't be abstinent of it. The truth is, let's just take mustard greens. I'm sure there's going to be one person out there that says, oh no, I love mustard greens. And if you love them, that's great. But the reality is if I told you that I promise you could be at your slim ideal weight easily, effortlessly, and maintain it for the rest of your life and never get cancer, heart disease, or diabetes. But there's one thing you can't partake in, and that's mustard greens. I'm pretty sure you'd say, oh, okay. You wouldn't fight me about it. You wouldn't say, oh my God, if I can't have mustard greens, I'm going to binge on mustard greens. I'm going to want mustard greens all the time. It's not going to happen because mustard greens aren't addictive. But with sugar, flour, oil, alcohol, salt, because these are addictive, you're going to want it more. And that just proves that you are addicted, the fact that you can't be abstinent. If I paid you $1 million, you probably could have periods of abstinence. But the fact is the more you dislike and balk and have difficulty with this concept of abstinence, it just shows me the more you're addicted. And that's okay. But you can't change what you don't acknowledge. So I hope that was useful, and I do have some questions that I'm going to go over today. So Mary wants to know, what is the caloric density per pound of winter squashes, delicata, kabocha, butternut versus sweet potatoes, garnet, jewel, Japanese, Hawaiian? So Mary, I didn't have time to look everything up before the broadcast, but there are plenty of great websites, including one at USDA.gov. It's the USDA database. It has every single food imaginable, every single nutrient. So I looked a few of them up. I couldn't find, kabocha I couldn't find, but I found that acorn squash was 181 calories per pound, spaghetti squash 141 calories per pound, butternut squash 204 calories per pound, sweet potatoes, different kinds, were 345 to 365, and potatoes, depending if they were white on or Yukon Gold, were 318 to 358. There's a chart here that you get when you join the Ultimate Weight Loss Program. It's on the back of my book. And basically, we don't break it down quite that much. We just say that starchy vegetables are 400 calories a pound. And really, you get the most bang for your buck in terms of being able to eat large volumes, because as you can see, those wonderful winter squashes that are prevalent throughout the year in some places, but especially right now in most parts of the United States, the delicata, the Hubbard, the acorn, the butternut, you can pretty much get all year round frozen, and sometimes kabocha too. These are great because when you think that the caloric density of beans and legumes is 600 calories a pound, you could ostensibly have 3 pounds of winter squashes for the same amount of calories. And if you're somebody that's at a plateau or struggling, this could be a really good thing because you can get a lot more food for a lot less calories. They serve winter squashes every single day for breakfast at the True North Health Center, along with, of course, their 24-hour salad bar and all those vegetables there, and along with green vegetables too, greens or bok choy or broccoli or things like that. So I think that winter squashes are probably the most underutilized of all the starches. In my opinion, they are the most delicious. In addition to being the most calorically dilute, some of my best recipes, which you can find in the last few episodes of Weight Loss Wednesday, the smoky butternut bisque and the creamy curried kabocha squash soup are two of my absolute favorite. So I really recommend you give winter squashes a chance. But I also don't recommend that you obsess or worry about caloric density if you're not adding sugar, oil, flour, alcohol, or salt to your food. The research Dr. Rolls has done has shown if you keep it to 567 on average, 567 calories per pound or less, most people can eat ad libitum as much as they want, as often as they want, whenever they want. If that's not you, try sequencing your meals: large raw salad with no starch, followed by a large serving of steamed greens, and then if you have any room, eat your starch. And there's nobody that's not been able to lose weight doing that. But don't skimp on starch, because no starch, no satiety, and that's where we get the binging. I know some people out there like the fruit and vegetables day. I think they're fine as a reset. But if you're somebody with a history of discordant eating, bulimia, anorexia, currently binging, don't skimp on the starch. That's That's the secret, and I've done wonderful YouTube videos with Dr. Doug Weil explaining how you do not get fat from eating starch. You get fat from eating the fat that you put on the starch, or from eating fat, or from eating processed foods. But if you're eating left of the red line, SOFA's free, there's no way you can't be lean. It's never not worked, guys. How do we know? Because every single person that said it wasn't working, gone to True North, not as a faster, but as a free feeder, and they all lost weight. So there's an old saying, all dieters are liars. Not saying you are a liar, but I'm saying if you're doing this program and you're not losing weight, then we got to talk, and we got to have a consult with one of the True North doctors, because it's never not worked. All right, so thanks for that question. Okay, I wrote these down. Okay, so Julie wants to know, is white rice okay? I don't like brown. The fiber difference between the two is minimal, but it's more refined. I'd like to lose another 15 or 20 pounds. So when you say okay, I don't know what you mean, Julie. Do you mean, is it okay for health? Is it okay for, like, if you're diabetic? Is it okay for weight loss? So the thing is it okay? There's like how many billions of Asians on the planet that evolved eating white rice that are slim, without heart disease, without cancer, and for them it's absolutely okay. If you're somebody that already has a lifestyle disease like diabetes, I know that it's not recommended to eat white rice. It's recommended to eat a whole grain like a brown rice or a quinoa or teff, millet, amaranth, that kind of thing. Now, is it okay? Well, I love it. I eat it. It's probably my most guilty pleasure that I pretty much limit to when I'm out, because it does taste better. But if you're trying to lose weight, eat the one you don't like as much, because then you won't eat as much of it. Now, it's true that it's pretty much the same calories. It's a little bit more calories, and maybe the fiber difference isn't significant, but the glycemic index is. And so that can be a factor, especially if you're eating it by itself, which is easy to do. I mean, if I have IBS, and when I have a flare up, I mean, there's nothing better for me than a comforting warm bowl of white rice eaten by itself. But if you're diabetic, that might not be such a good thing. Now, you're saying that you said that when you eat your big veg stir fry when you get home from work, you're often not hungry for starch until much later, but then it becomes too late to eat as you go to bed by 9:30. Should I just skip it if I'm not hungry for starch until after 8? Absolutely. Hunger's not an emergency, and so many people act like it is. I'm starving. It's 10 o'clock. I haven't eaten since 10 o'clock last night. You're not starving. You're maybe hungry, and hunger's uncomfortable. But realize, if you have fat on your body anywhere, you're walking around with a 24-hour buffet. You're not going to starve if you skip a meal, and you're not going to starve if you go to bed one night without eating starch. It's never good to eat late, never, ever, ever, especially from a GI standpoint. But now we know also from a weight loss standpoint, and that research will come out next March in the Real Truth About Weight Loss Summit by the experts that I interviewed. The thing is if you're not hungry, don't eat. It doesn't matter what time it is. There's no such thing as preventative eating. You don't put on a raincoat today because it's going to rain next Tuesday, just in case. Don't eat when not hungry. No one could have become overweight or obese unless they ate outside the demands of true hunger. So if you're not hungry, don't eat. Now, it'd be different if it was like maybe the daytime and you didn't have enough energy to get through the day and do your activities of daily living because you were so low on the starch. But at 8 o'clock at night, you're almost ready to go to bed. So go to bed so you don't have to eat the starch. So as long as you avoid brown rice because you don't like it, you're never going to like brown rice. So I would encourage you to try some of the different brown rices. The organic Texmati rice, it is the most delicious rice I've ever tasted. I like it even better than white rice, and I love white rice. I save white rice usually for when I go out because it's easier to get. But I don't think there's anything wrong with white rice. You will lose weight eating it based on caloric density. Look at this. Look at Walter Kempner. Look at his research. Look at the Duke University diet, the rice diet. My morbidly obese brother only lost weight twice in his life. Once was when he went to the Dean Ornish program, and once when he went to Duke University and was on the rice diet. And all Walter Kempner gave his patients was basically white rice, but they weren't even getting enough calories, so he had to add sugar and fruit juice. And not only did they all lose weight to a very, very lean weight, if you go on Dr. McDougall's website, you'll see that the Kempner weight chart is even more strict than Dr. Furman's weight chart. Not only did they lose weight to that very lean weight eating white rice, but they also reversed their diabetes. So I don't think there's anything wrong with white rice, but I think you need to try to learn to like other rices as well, and to also diversify what you're eating, and don't just eat white rice or brown rice. What's wrong with Bhutanese red rice or forbidden black rice? Or how about some wild rice, which is really a grass, or some quinoa, which is a pseudo grain and a seed? Let's diversify a little bit and try to expand our palate and like other things. But I think white rice is probably okay, but again, I don't know if you're diabetic or how your weight loss is going. If it's causing you to eat more than you would of another flavor, then maybe it's not okay for you. So that's why this is a one size fits most, not a one size fits all. But I agree with you, white rice is delicious. And that's the only thing I like about eating out, is because I get to have it, because it smells great, it tastes great, and most people can lose weight eating it. It's what you're eating in addition to it, which is the SOFAs, the sugar, oil, flour, alcohol, salt. People put, butter on their rice. A lot of times restaurants, you have to ask, even in these poke restaurants, even in places like Chipotle, it is cooked with oil. You absolutely have to ask. Okay. All right. So we got that one. Let's see what else we got here. So Candace is a new member, so she asked some questions that I won't spend a lot of time answering because they are in other episodes, but I will go over them briefly. And one of the things she asked, whoops, excuse me, I should turn my phone off when I'm doing this, right? Okay, sorry about that. Okay, so she asked about getting her family on board, and should she do that first, or should she just try to coincide or survive or live in the environment with the non-compliant food? So I really recommend those of you with this question would watch the Managing the Environment webinar I did with Dr. Doug Lisle. There's a part 1 and a part 2 with Sharon McRae. You know from any episode you've watched with me that the environment's the #1 predictor of your success, that if it's in your house, it's in your mouth, and it's not a question of if you will eat it, only when. We've often talked about how willpower is a short-lived commodity, and you don't have to use it to eat stuff that's not there. So if it's there, it's always going to be banging on your brain, because your brain is designed to seek the most concentrated source of calories in your environment, and it's going to know it's there, even if it's locked up in a food safe. So eventually you are going to succumb. And it's just, I don't have the bandwidth in my brain to always be using willpower to fight off, having non-compliant food in your house. So you can't learn to coincide with it or coexist with it, in my opinion. I have not seen that successfully yet, at least not long term. I've seen 2 people now lose weight in an unclean environment, but they had very, very disagreeable personalities. But I haven't seen people maintain a weight loss long term in an unclean environment. As they say in AA, if you hang around a barbershop long enough, it's just a matter of time till you get a haircut. Dr. Lisle's been saying for years, we have to work harder on our environment than we do ourselves. So you're not going to be able to get your family on board most of the time. You certainly won't be able to get the children on board if the spouse isn't on board. I've never seen that happen. And unfortunately, children tend to eat more like the father, research shows, than the mother. And it's usually the mother that wants to lose weight and that has the food addiction and is trying to get the family healthy. So unless the spouse is on board, you're probably not going to ever get the children on board, because it doesn't really work well in a divided household. But what you can do is negotiate a clean environment. And if you need help doing that, Dr. Doug Lisle at esteemdynamics.com does private sessions. The reason there's not a one-size-fits-all with this is because it's going to be based on the personality of the people involved. And he has said that he can help everyone do this, but there's not just one sweeping statement to help everybody. And generally, the woman tends to be very agreeable, and that's why this happens. Nice girls finish fat, guys, and bitch is just an acronym for babe is taking care of herself. So I don't see great success for people in an unclean environment long term. They may have some success, but they're always going to be fighting the pleasure trap and the cram circuit. And I wish you well if you're in an unclean environment, but I don't see anyone getting used to living with these things in their house. It's bad enough that we have to have them out in the world. So work harder on your environment than yourself, because the truth is I'm not perfect, but my environment is, and that's what allowed me to be successful these last 7 years once I understood the importance of environmental control. Okay, Carrie says, if you're trying to lose the last 25 pounds, Is losing 1 pound per week really realistic? Even when I do UWL very strictly, I barely lose 2 pounds a month. I have no health issues except for extra weight. She states her height and weight, which is probably not relevant for you guys, but in our group we can do that. I'm feeling like all my effort to not eat right of the red line foods is not really worth it, and I'm wondering why the weight is not falling off like it is for everyone else in UWL. Are my expectations unrealistic? Well, not everybody's weight just falls off, Carrie, because if you're familiar with my story, which if you're not, I recommend you watch it, From Fat Vegan to Skinny Bitch. It took me 27 months to lose these 50 pounds. So the weight did not fall off me. I was hypothyroid the entire time I was losing weight. I had just suffered a severely broken knee, so I was not exercising at all. So it did not just fall off me at all. Now, we've had a few really unbelievable success stories in the group, like Myra and Elizabeth, who got down to their skinny bitch weight in 6 months or 8 months. That's not everybody. And even Shada, who's lost 120 pounds, had a 7-month plateau. So I really encourage you to watch the YouTube with Dr. Doug Lisle, where he talks about what an ideal weight is, and the one where he did at the Dr. McDougall webinar called The Slow Fast Way. So I don't know if your expectations are unrealistic, but even if you're losing 2 pounds a month, that's 24 pounds in a year. And from what it looks like your weight, that would be enough weight to get you to goal weight. So is it worth it restricting right of the red line foods? Well, I think it depends what the right of the red line foods are. Because if you're restricting animal products, which are to the right of the red line, and processed oil, and sugar and flour, then it's absolutely worth it for health and recovery from food addiction. If what you're talking about right at the red line is nuts, seeds, and avocado, I don't know if it's worth it, because I don't know what role those foods played in your daily life before, and how important they are to you, and how long you've been on the program, and what you're eating. And and also I haven't seen your food diary, and that's going to help. I'd like to see the last 3 days at least, if not the last 30 days, to see why you're not losing weight. And I would recommend to ask you first when your last medical workup was. You're sure you're not hypothyroid? Has it been checked? A lot of times in just a routine physical, they only check like a couple of the numbers of the thyroid, but there's a lot more comprehensive tests. What has your weight loss been like before on other programs? Yeah, see, people love the weighing and measuring programs because they lose weight very quickly, and they tend to put it back on even more quickly, and then they join Ultimate Weight Loss, and then they're the most difficult people to work with because they're afraid to eat anything, especially starch. So I think 2 pounds a month is stellar, and if you keep going, you'll get there eventually. And when you lose weight that slowly, you don't squirt out those hormones that make you hungry. I always forget if it's ghrelin or leptin. So I have found that slow weight loss is not only the best weight loss, but the most sustainable. But I can understand that it is aggravating if you want to be at your goal weight right away, which is why you have to listen to some of the webinars with Dr. Lisle about self-esteem and impressing your internal audience, because what really matters is how your internal audience feels about you for sticking to the program. Okay, I hope I answered your question. So Nan said, would I address flour? It seems like sometimes grinding something like oats or quinoa is mentioned, but is that ever less detrimental? So in my book, The Secrets to Ultimate Weight Loss, I explain this really in great detail, how sugar and flour go through the same refining process as drugs and alcohol. And for those of us that are vulnerable, have these sensitive brains to these drug-like foods, that are now drug-like because they've gone through this processing, it reacts the same in the body. Flour can be higher in the glycemic index than even sugar. Now, we don't recommend grinding grains in the Ultimate Weight Loss program, and all the recipes use whole grains. They use rolled oats, which in my opinion, and I've talked about this before, really isn't a whole grain. It's really more like a flour, because it's nothing like the oat groat which it came from, or the steel cut oat. It's flattened in steam, and if you rub a roll oat, even if it's not an instant oat, in your finger, it practically becomes a flour. So I don't recommend those for people that are very, very sensitive and on the spectrum of food addiction. But people really want these treats. They want the muffins, they want the bread-like things. So I created some recipes with great reluctance. My book would have been out 2 years sooner, except everybody said it needed recipes. And I didn't want to do it, because if you suffer from food addiction, you don't need recipes. That's the last thing you need, is blogs and cookbooks. But anyway, so in a couple recipes, we take a half a cup of grain, like a whole grain like millet or quinoa, and we grind it into a flour. And this is for 12 to 24 servings, depending on the recipe, which means a person is now getting 1 to 2 teaspoons of flour in a recipe with a lot of starch and some fruit. And the reason I did that is because as a chef, I didn't like the texture of just using whole oats. I mean, as a person, I don't mind it. Like, it tastes fine to me not using those 8 tablespoons or 24 teaspoons of ground flour. I don't have a problem not using it, and I use it if I haven't, and I don't if I don't. But as somebody who is a pastry chef, and you're trying to feed it to other people, oats make a very gummy texture if they're not ground. And by using a half a cup of ground millet or quinoa, for some reason, it mitigates it. But my advice to everybody is, when in doubt, leave it out. You don't have to use it. You can just put another half cup of whole oats in. It's just going to have a gummier texture. So when you say detrimental, it really depends how sensitive you are to the effects of food addiction, which exist on a continuum. Okay, I've got one more. This wasn't that hard to do by myself, but understand there's no way I can see these tiny little comments over there, and apparently I couldn't see them on my phone. So I will check them out, and if you're in Ultimate Weight Loss, you know I'm on those boards 24 hours a day. You can always ask me. If you're not, I'll do my best to answer you here as well. Okay, Jane. I may have to come back and answer this more fully because I don't have the answer. And the question is, how do you get back up when you've lost weight? And I think that's going to be an individual thing, and I think it's a heartbreaking thing. And if this has happened to you, I'm really sorry. And I wish you could have reached out before you gained all or some of it back. This just shows you what a difficult, sorry, that's telling me I have to leave. I have to go to the Warner Brothers Museum because I am thinking of donating my 30-year collection of Scooby-Doo memorabilia, and I wanted to check out the people that would be getting it first. But anyway, so how do you get up? If you're not familiar with Heather Goodwin, Butterfly Effect, Plant-Based Weight Loss, she has a YouTube channel. She's an extraordinary human being, and I'm not going to speak about her other than to say that she's had quite a journey, and she talks about it openly, and she's somebody I would really follow. I have not gained my weight back on the Ultimate Weight Loss program. I've gained my weight back that I lost twice in my life, because the way that I lost the weight, once through anorexia and once through fen-phen, wasn't sustainable. And so I'm trying to put this in, like, if this happened, how would I do? I think you just try again. I mean, I don't know. You get up, and like Rocky, you get up. How you get up? You go to True North. You have a plan, so that, like, for me, one of the things we worked on really extensively in the mastery program was to have not only a relapse plan, like what we do if we relapse, but a relapse prevention plan. And I have mine. I know what I'm going to do. If I ever get my, finger in a jar of peanut butter, I know what I'm going to do. I know I'm going to get the first session with Dr. Lyle. I'm very blessed to have Dr. Goldhammer's cell phone. If I had to, I would be on the next plane to True North. So I would do whatever I had to do. I don't know your circumstances or what you can do, but when you get up, if you've lost weight, you say to yourself, you know what? This sucks, because it probably does. But the fact that you've lost weight is very encouraging, because that tells me that you know how to lose weight, that you've done it. And I believe if you did it before, you could do it again. There's 3 kinds of people that come to me for help with weight loss. And there are people that, believe it or not, they come in for food addiction. They've never had to lose weight. And they're actually some of the most difficult people to work with. And it's some of the saddest cases, because they don't carry it on the outside, and yet they know in their brain that they don't have a calm and stable brain, and they feel like there's something wrong with them. But the world says, well, what are you complaining about? You're skinny, eat a cookie, And then we have people that have been yo-yo dieting for years, that have gained and lost and gained and lost. And there's a subset of people that have never, ever lost weight. So they've been overweight or obese since childhood, and they're just as desperate to lose weight, but they don't have under their belt that experience of ever losing weight. But you do, Jane. So you know it can be done. You know how it can be done. What you maybe don't know yet is how to maintain it. And that's what I think we need to help you with. So as far as getting up, you basically only need a few days of abstinence under your belt, because that's enough to impress your internal audience to say, you know what? Maybe she's serious. She's really trying. So as hard as it is, because once you've gotten back in the pleasure trap, the food really sucks at first, which is why doing a supervised water only fast at True North, or even doing a juice fast at home, or even doing mono eating for a day, like just watermelon. It doesn't have to be just potatoes. There's nothing magical about potatoes. You could just do, anything, but I get those greens in right away, because those thylakoids, those help the cravings, they turn off the hunger switch. But, when you regain lost weight, you basically, you brush yourself off, I could have had kale, and you just get back on the program. And that's why I'm not a fan of these. I'm counting days, but you don't go back to day 1. You go back to day 43 or day 207, whatever day it was for you. You didn't lose all those days that you were abstinent. So get up and win the race. There's a poem called The Race. Google it. That's what you do, because your success, Jane, and everybody's success on any program isn't defined by how many times you fall, but by how many times you get up. Thanks for watching. I'm Chef AJ, and I believe you can have both the health and the body you deserve.